Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the very first session of the third series of Informed Voices Media Literacy webinars. I'm Shalala Mehmetli. I'm an English teacher, a Fulbright alumna, and a media education specialist from Azerbaijan. And I'm very happy and honored to be co-hosting today's session with my dear friend and Fulbright fellow, Gabriela Pastohi from Hungary. Dear Gabi.
Thank you, Shalala. Hello, everyone. I'm Gabriela Pastohi, an English and media literacy teacher from Hungary. I had the pleasure of being a Fulbright Fellow at the University of Wisconsin in 2024, together with Ms. Shalala Memadli. It's an honor to co-host this session with her for the first time, and I'm thrilled to welcome you all. Together, we'll be exploring a very relevant topic: how media, especially advertising, manipulates our perception. But before giving the floor to our special guest, Shalala will quickly remind you of the rules for receiving the certificate in this series. Shalala?
Thank you, dear Gabriela. For our viewers, both returning and new, here's how you can be qualified for your certificate. You should attend at least 4 out of 6 webinars, and you should complete and pass the quiz at the end of the session. The link for the quiz will be shared in the chat. So just stay with us till the end and give the quiz your best shot. Gabi?
Okay, so now let's introduce our guest speaker. We are delighted to welcome back Associate Professor George Jologua, if I'm not mistaken. Hello. And he serves at Caucasus University and is also an adjunct faculty instructor at Webster University. Many of you may remember him from the first series where he delivered a standout session. Today, he'll be helping us dive into the world of manipulation in the media, focusing especially on commercials and advertising, how they shape the way we think, feel, and act. So the floor is yours, Mr. Jologua.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction and for pronouncing my last name correctly, which doesn't happen so often. And thank you to the hosts of this meeting for inviting me again, and thank you to those who attend this meeting and who will watch the recording of this meeting later. I will not add any more introduction to myself. If you would have any questions, you can always ask. Otherwise, let me share my screen and move to the presentation. So the topic which we are discussing today will be commercial propaganda. I believe that as this series is going to speak about political propaganda and this type of issues, I think this would be a good introduction to remind ourselves that propaganda is not only about politics and wars and elections and so on, but there are many different types of propaganda which are not less important than political propaganda. And I personally always teach about advertising in shapes of commercial propaganda. I would not say that every single advertisement is a propaganda. It might be, but still I would not say that every single advertisement is a piece of propaganda. But still, all advertisement can be discussed in shapes of commercial propaganda. Now, okay. Shalala, would you please confirm that you can see my presentation and my slides?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, wonderful. Then let me begin. Commercial propaganda. Before I move to the topic of commercial propaganda, I want to very briefly speak about relationship of propaganda and media literacy education. Because in many parts of the world, as I have observed, media literacy is often associated with the means to fight, to counter propaganda and so-called fake news and disinformation and so on. Of course, these topics are part of media literacy education. But the problem which I have encountered, especially here in Georgia, where I come from, when I when I meet with teachers, when I have teacher training, at the beginning I always ask, "What is media literacy? Please, would you tell me what do you think is the meaning of media literacy?" And most of participants always say fake news, disinformation, propaganda, because we got this idea, and many people in many parts of the world got this idea that media literacy's sole purpose is to counter propaganda, disinformation, and the so-called fake news. While media literacy is about so much more, because media is about so much more rather than just disinformation and propaganda and so on. So why so many people I'm speaking from my personal experience because in Georgia here, most of people, when you ask what is media literacy, they respond, it's a tool, it's an instrument to counter propaganda and disinformation and the so-called fake news. So where does this understanding come from? Let's also discuss this to understand why many people relate media literacy only to the issue of propaganda and fake news. Basically, it started long ago, long before maybe, but it exaggerated during US elections in 2016 when social media in United States was full of what then we called fake news. So fake reports, lies, let's say like this. So it was even it got so popular this kind of content that it even had commercial gains for some people. For example, a very popular website which used to share what we call fake news, they found out that it belonged actually to a teenager in Macedonia who had nothing to do with United States and its elections and did not really care who would win the elections. He was simply making money. These fake news and these disinformation campaigns became so popular that they even became profitable. So then I think it was BBC. They found this boy in Macedonia, a young boy, I think he's 16 years old or something. And he said that he had two websites. One website was sharing fake news about Trump, and the other one about Clinton. And he had no interest in US politics, he was just simply making money. And he said that at some point he realized that the bigger the lie, more people would click on it. So he was making money. So this is how crazy it became during these elections. And then also after a few years, also during Brexit, when United Kingdom had a referendum to leave the European Union, again, British social networks were flooded with false information, what we call fake news and disinformation and propaganda and so on. And this is when politicians realized that media literacy is important, that so many lies spreading on the internet is damaging for everybody. For any, it's not about Trump or Clinton or yes or no to Brexit, but it damages the whole society, so many lies. So what could they do? They could not forbid fake news because it would violate the freedom of speech concept and so on. So they decided to invest more in media literacy. You had on this program once. You had David Buckingham, a prominent scholar from United Kingdom, and once I was attending a conference, he was a speaker, and he said after one speech, a British politician came up to me and said to me, maybe we should start teaching about media in schools, like about lies in media in schools. And Professor Buckingham responded that he had been doing this for 30 years already. So during this US elections and Brexit, what changed was that politicians saw the importance of media education, of media literacy, if you would like. And this is when funding, global funding for this issue really increased. And here, for example, in Georgia, for the past 10 years, uh, really many projects have been coming here, conducted by local NGOs with funded by international donor organizations about countering fake news and disinformation and propaganda, because this is the part of media where which became politically significant, right? So when it became politically significant, big funding came on this topic. So as a result, in many parts of the world, including my own part where I come from, white public and teachers specifically got a little bit of misleading understanding what media literacy means. They believed, and many of them still believe, I'm speaking from my own experience of working with teachers, that media literacy is about countering fake news and propaganda and disinformation. Yes, it is also this, but it's so many other things as well. Because entering a school and speaking about fake news, I mean, yes, maybe you could do that, but realize that these children are watching cartoons right now. So why don't we speak about cartoons first? Why don't we speak about computer games first? Why don't we speak about TV shows, stereotypes, screen time, addiction, and so many others, advertising, and so many other things as well, right? So I'm not sure how it is in Azerbaijan, but in Georgia and in many other places that I have experienced, media literacy is quite often perceived as a means to counter fake news and propaganda and disinformation. Only this, and it's not. It's not. Media education has been going on for at least 100 years, as we know it. It didn't start in 2016. By the end of the last century, there were specialists who were teaching about media. And in UK, for example, from the beginning of 1930s, they had classroom materials very popular with which they taught in schools about all types of media, including entertainment media and news media and so on. So I had to do this introduction because when we are speaking about propaganda in shapes of media literacy meeting, we have to mention this, that media literacy is about propaganda, but not only about propaganda for sure. And I had to mention this because in my experience, many teachers believe that media literacy is means to counter only fake news and propaganda. So propaganda is our topic as well, but there are so many other topics which had been studied and analyzed in schools all in many parts of the world for more than half a century, right? Okay, so having said this, now let's move to the topic of propaganda. And let's first of all define what is propaganda. Because when we say propaganda, most of us mean politics, wars, elections, democracies, dictatorships, and so on and so on. So propaganda is, in our understanding, mostly and in our speech, is mostly associated with politics and political issues and conflicts and wars and so on. Propaganda, basically, you could find many definitions of propaganda, but at the end, they are all quite similar. I'm just presenting one of definitions because this is a book which I'm reading right now by Philip Taylor, and he defines propaganda as a deliberate attempt to persuade people to think and behave in a desired way. You would find maybe other like famous definitions of propaganda. They are all very similar. They all say the same, that propaganda is a way of communication with a deliberate attempt to persuade someone to think or to do something, right? So, if we have a look and think about this definition, we will see that there is much more propaganda in life than what is like political propaganda and wars and conflicts and dictatorships and so on. Maybe most of us, many of us at least, engage in some sort of propaganda ourselves each day. For example, when you try to explain to your kid why should they have a breakfast before going to kindergarten, which I often have to do in the mornings, I actually engage in propaganda, right? I communicate with a deliberate attempt to change his behavior, and that's where we should start thinking about propaganda. We should start thinking about ourselves, and we should also start viewing our forms of communication, or both online and offline, and pay attention. How much propaganda do we carry out sometimes? And if you have a good look, propaganda is not such a negative word. It got negative connotations before because all of these wars and conflicts and authoritarianism and so on, political issues. But now I'm going to tell you a story about a person who was a propagandist. His profession was called propagandist, and it was not a bad word. It was not such a negative connotation. So we should really look well at propaganda. And let me also make one note because at some point, while thinking about this definition, I got scared as an educator. Am I a propagandist? When I speak to my students, is it also a form of propaganda? And I did some research, and actually, no. There is a difference between education and propaganda. And the main difference is that a propagandist's goal is to change the way you think or behave. And the educator's role is to make you a more better critical thinker. So that's the basic difference between educator and propagandist. If my goal is to change how my student thinks about something, then I might turn into a propagandist. But if my goal is to promote critical thinking skills among my students, then I'm an educator. So there is this big difference between education and propaganda. So, what types of propaganda do we usually encounter in society? Uh, so, there is political propaganda, there is commercial propaganda, and there is sociological propaganda, which is also sometimes called sociocultural propaganda. Well, political, it's clear it's aimed at achieving political goals like gaining or maintaining power. Commercial propaganda is about promoting consumption, brand loyalty, or market ideology to sell products, right? Of course, including advertising. And sociological propaganda is aimed at integrating individuals into a shared system of beliefs, values, and behavior. This last sociocultural propaganda is often carried out by public bodies, like social campaigns, like wear a seatbelt or like vaccinate your children, and so on and so on. It's about social behavior. Well, political, it's clear. And now let's speak about commercial propaganda, which has to be the most important topic of our meeting. Because again, as I already said, when we say propaganda, we usually think about politics. We think about wars, we think about elections, we think about dictatorships, democracies, and so on. But we should also consider that that's not all of it. There is also commercial propaganda, which we encounter maybe even more often in our daily lives. And let me tell you a story. Let me tell you a story of this person who was called Edward Bernays. And he is much less well known as he should be. I teach about him to my students, and I think we should teach about him in schools as well. Well, in a very simplified manner, maybe, or we could stick with students with him. But he changed so much in the fields of public relations and marketing and advertising that all that we encounter today, virtually all that we encounter today, comes from his ideas, both in public relations and in marketing and advertising as well. And he was a propagandist. His profession was propaganda. But at some point, he realized, after World War I that propaganda had gained, the word propaganda had gained a negative connotation, and he changed the name. And would you guess what he called his profession? Public relations, PR. So he was the first person to use the words public relations council. He called himself public relations council. Now, the term public relations existed before, but it was not so popular and not so widespread. So when he realized that propaganda was a bad word, he called it public relations. And by no means I'm trying to demonize now the field of public relations or criticize. Of course not. It's a very respectful profession. But if we have a closer look, we would see that really much of public relations quite often looks like propaganda. Yes, this comes from Edward Bernays, who actually he was the first one to use the words public relations council, because he realized that propaganda is not such a nice word anymore. What was the most interesting about Edward Bernays was that he was Sigmund Freud's nephew. He was the son of Freud's sister. And what Bernays did is that he applied Freud's psychoanalytic ideas to the field of public relations and marketing. So Freud would always send him his works, and Bernays would integrate this knowledge of Freud's psychoanalytic ideas into PR and marketing. And most of what we see today comes from this interrelation of Freud's ideas and Bernays' skills to integrate these ideas into marketing and PR. How Bernays turned from propagandist to public relations counsel. So during World War I, Bernays was employed by U.S. Committee on Public Information. So his job was propaganda, to show United States in a better way to Europe and to all the parties involved in the conflict. And he worked on the image to increase the image of President Woodrow Wilson, who tried to present himself as an advocate for democracy all over Europe. So he was a propagandist, which was not such a negative word by the time. And he accompanied President Woodrow Wilson to the Paris Peace Conference. So this was peace conference which ended the war, the World War I. And Edward Bernays participated in these negotiations. He was very young, I think 26 or something. He participated, and there his work was so successful that he himself was shocked. And he got this idea. He even says this in his book and later in his interviews, that he realized that mass persuasion techniques used during wartime propaganda can also be applied in peacetime. So he said, if I can promote a president, why cannot I promote some orange juice, for example, right? With the same techniques. But at the same time, he had realized that the word propaganda had a negative connotation to it because the conflicting sides were using propaganda. So he called it public relations instead of propaganda. And again, his biggest goal was to apply Freud's ideas about subconscious, that people are driven not only by conscious thoughts, but also by subconscious fears and feelings and emotions and hopes and desires and so on. And he integrated this into public relations and marketing. So he had many famous stories, what he did, like many breakthroughs in different fields. And one was this. A less known US president, Calvin Coolidge, had a problem with public approval. His rating was falling down, and he hired Edward Bernays to increase his rating among public. And do you know what he did, Edward Bernays? He invited Hollywood stars to his White House breakfast. So Edward Bernays was the first one who linked celebrities to politics. It may happened before a few times, but it was not systematic. He came up with this idea of relating politics to celebrities. Today, just try to remember how much celebrities you see in politics and how much celebrities you see in advertising. Like all famous football players and all champions are in advertising, right? It was Bernays' idea, and it was based on Sigmund Freud's theories of it was his ideas, Freud's ideas about emotional association. So he linked a positive symbol, a beloved actor, movie star, with a target, political leader or product, right? So you have a symbol which everybody loves, positive symbol, and you have potato chips. So you put these two together, and people like the potato chips because they like the movie star, right? Now it's so obvious because now we see this every day. But it was not so obvious back then. So everybody was shocked when he got this idea. So what should we do about president's rating? And he said, invite Hollywood stars to have a dinner, breakfast with him, right? So it worked. It worked so well that everybody is doing it even today. So it was integrating Freud's ideas into public relations. And when it comes to advertising, he changed the whole field of advertising based on Sigmund Freud's ideas. So Bernays applied Freud's psychoanalytic theory to mass persuasion. PR or marketing or politics, political propaganda, everywhere, he applied Freud's idea that people are driven by irrational, subconscious feelings and emotions and fears and hopes and so on and so on. So basically, he started to dig deeper into subconscious, and he started to target public's subconscious desires. He believed that people's buying decisions are driven not by reason, but by unconscious emotions, desires, and fears. And instead of selling a product's function, he sold its symbolic meaning. So he gave symbolic meaning to products. For example, he made Americans have bacon and eggs for breakfast. A bacon company approached him and hired him to help sell more bacon. And what he did was he paid famous doctors to go on TV and say that bacon is healthy for your breakfast. So his idea was, if you're interested, you should read his book, which is called Propaganda, and he himself tells all the stories. His idea was not to tell you you need this product, but to tell you something else that you would start begging for this product. Because before, advertising would tell you, you need this car, you need new shoes, you need something else, right? Bernays changed this. He didn't tell you need this. He said this is good. It will make you feel good. So he targeted not the rational decision of a consumer, but he targeted emotions. And now I will show you a campaign which he did. So imagine he made breakfast of bacon and eggs popular when bacon is one of the unhealthiest things anybody could eat. I mean, it might cause you a heart attack. I mean, in my house, I have forbidden bacon. It's so unhealthy. But he made the whole country believe that bacon and eggs is the perfect breakfast, and the whole nation was having bacon and eggs for breakfast for I don't know how long, just to sell bacon, right? And he has many stories like this. He has many stories like this. So he found this idea that instead of, for example, if somebody made wooden furniture, or iron furniture and came to Bernays and said, please help me sell this product, like wooden furniture. Instead of advertising, Bernays would go to fashion designers and tell them to bring in a new trend of having wooden furniture at home. So he would not directly target the consumers. He would not say, oh, buy this wooden table, it's so good. No, he would ask fashion magazines to say that wooden tables are a new trend. He would pay the fashion magazines, and then people would start begging to find the wooden table. So again, instead of rational advertising, he brought in this targeting of subconscious feelings and emotions of people by telling you that you might not need this car, but you will feel so good in this car. And he claimed that he was the first one who associated a new car with sexiness. He said that I was the first one to suggest that a sports car would make a man more attractive. Before him, it was advertisement of a car was only about function of a car. And he said that, you know, if you have a new car, you will look more attractive to women. So he basically changed, revolutionized the whole field. And today we see results of this. Yes, and now let me tell you about his one of the most famous. This is what we would call a propaganda campaign. So the story goes like this. And I sometimes use this, not sometimes, but I quite often use it with students, this story, because story is amazing. Uh, by the beginning of 20th century, women in the United States did not smoke cigarettes. Some of you might be familiar with this story. So there was sort of a taboo on women smoking, especially in public. So smoking for women was associated with low life, prostitution, and so on and so on. A self-respecting woman, a family woman, would never smoke, especially in the public. And of course, tobacco companies didn't like it because they were losing half of consumers. Imagine if half of the nation does not consume your product. And they approached Edward Bernays and they gave him a simple, not so simple, but a very clear task. They said, make women smoke. So imagine, now we are speaking about a nation of hundreds of millions of people, and his task is to make women smoke when smoking is taboo for women. Self-respecting women do not smoke. He did it with one trick. Just one trick was enough to make the women of the whole nation start smoking. There was a parade in New York, an Easter parade. You know this parade when people go and walk on the street and there is music and local traditions and so on. And he hired 4 or 5 good-looking, well-dressed women and gave them a task that during a parade, while people were walking, these 4 or 5, I don't remember exactly, women had to separate from the group and start smoking cigarettes. So he paid money to these women. And at the same time, he called the press and he told them that there are women who are going to have some provocations. They are making some provocations there. So these 4 or 5 women, they took out cigarettes, they smoked during this parade, and there was press, and they took photos. And Bernays told them that these are the torches of freedom. So that these women are sort of protesting or having a performance called Torches of Freedom. And these were not like low level of society women. They were like good looking, well dressed women. And it got so much attention that press published these photos of women smoking in public during a parade. And do you know what happened? All around the United States, women started to go in public and smoke cigarettes. It was called Torches of Freedom. So cigarettes became associated with freedom. that women are free to do the same what men are doing. So with this one trick, he managed to turn smoking a cigarette for women from a taboo, disgusting issue to a symbol of liberation. Women would go in public and smoke cigarettes to prove that they are equal to men, that they are emancipated. Because if men can do it, why cannot women do it? So with this one trick, he he turned smoking cigarettes from a shameful habit into a symbol of freedom. And of course, the tobacco industry caught up with this process, and they started so many campaigns about women's liberation that women, this is Lucky Strikes, they had a slogan, women are free. So they associated smoking cigarettes with freedom. Now, this is what would you call a propaganda campaign? Of course, this is a propaganda campaign. This is a campaign. So they, with one simple trick, well, that was followed with some media coverage and so on, he managed to turn smoking from a shameful habit into a symbol of freedom. Now we can stop with Edward Bernays and continue what happened afterwards, because this trend continued. When Marlboro introduced, I have hidden the logos here just to be on the safe side, especially when working in schools. But when Marlboro introduced this cowboy in their advertisement, the sales of this brand of cigarettes increased 3,000%. So 3,000% is, when I speak to my students, I tell them, imagine that somebody was giving you $10 per day, and suddenly they are giving you $300 per day. That's how big is the difference of 3,000%. And as soon as Marlboro introduced this cowboy in advertising, sales increased 3,000%. Why? Because he's a symbol of freedom. If you remember, his now they don't show tobacco advertisement on TV, but before they used to, and in all these advertisements, this person was a representation of freedom. He doesn't have a boss. He doesn't have a working hours. He doesn't have. He's like free on the field with his horse, sitting down by the river or by the fire and doing whatever actually he wants. He's on his own. So pay attention. As soon as Marlboro introduced symbol of freedom in his branding, sales increased 3,000%, which is an incredible increase. And then it also continues today. I mean, if you have a look at modern advertisements of cigarettes, uh, uh, it's all about freedom. Most of it is about freedom, because this is a continuation of Bernays' work. I mean, how would you rationally sell a cigarette? Rationally, nobody would buy a cigarette, right? You spend money to destroy your health. Where is the point here, right? So it is impossible to sell cigarettes rationally, so they sell it emotionally. And the idea here again is freedom. And what I do with my students is I ask them this question: what do cigarettes cause? And then they give me many things like lung cancer and so many things. But then I tell them, so if any teacher wants to use this, the way I do it is that I tell them about this campaign, Torches of Freedom, then Marlboro Man again about freedom, then modern advertisements about freedom, and then I ask them, what is one thing that every smoker will get? Because things that smoking causes, like cancer and so on, not every smoker will get them. Some will not. But what is one thing that every smoker will get for sure? Does anyone want to respond? What is one thing that every smoker of cigarettes will get for sure? What is it?
Addiction to nicotine?
Addiction, dependency, exactly. That is one thing that we know that every single. Now pay attention. For 100 years, the message of tobacco companies has been freedom. Gabi, as you responded, would you kindly respond? What is the absolute opposite of the word freedom?
Addiction.
Dependency, yes.
Dependent.
So here is the trick. I mean, for 100 years, they have been telling us that the result of this product is freedom, while the result of consuming this product is the absolute opposite.
We've been
Freedom,
misled.
sorry?
We've been misled.
Yes, that's propaganda. That's propaganda. So for 100 years, the message has been freedom, and the result of consuming the product is the absolute opposite of freedom. Dependency is the opposite word of freedom, as Gabi correctly mentioned, right? So this is a very good example of commercial propaganda campaign, which has been going on for 100 years, started by Bernays, but going on through other. Shalal, can I ask how much time do we have?
Um,
10
about
more minutes?
yes, 10, 15.
Ah, okay, okay. So I'm not in a rush because I also want to show some practical materials which teachers maybe could use later. So let's have a look at a commercial which is like less damaging, of course, than smoking. There is nothing damaging in diapers. And I like to use also this kind of advertising during classes because we should not move too protectionist. Like it's not, media literacy is not only about like disasters like smoking and so on, but we should of course discuss messages which contain less danger. For example, this is a wonderful product, which is babies' diapers. I don't even want to imagine what they did, how they lived before this was invented, because I have a young child and I would never imagine how they lived, how they raised kids before diapers were invented. So this is a very positive product, right? Now, as you know, a significant part of media literacy education is deconstruction of media messages, right? In a media literacy class, we call everything a text, like audiovisual text. So every image can be read and should be read as a text. Now, I don't mean this particular text here, the words which are written. Let's not pay attention to that, but let's have a look at the image. Let's have a look at the image and try to read it as a text. So this is what I show in classroom and ask, what do we see? What are the objects? Without judgments and associations, just the objects. What are the objects that we see on the screen? Does anyone want to respond?
Mother and the baby.
A baby, true. Mother is your association. We see a woman.
Yeah.
Let's say that we see a woman. Then we, of course, associate that this is a mother. So then I move on and ask, how does this woman look? What can you say about this woman?
Content.
Content. What makes you say that?
She's smiling.
Exactly. She's smiling, which is a symbol of content and calmness and so on. Okay, what can we say about a baby? How does a baby look?
Peaceful, maybe.
Yes, peaceful, very good, which is not so often when baby is this age. Also, how does this baby look?
Yeah. We have some answers here. Sleeping, safe.
Okay, safe, good. Sleeping? No, you don't know. I mean, eyes are shut, but we don't know that it's sleeping. Okay, I don't see the answers here, but okay, actually I can press chat and see the answers. Safe, sleeping, okay. Well, baby is clean, right? That's what we can say for sure, that the baby is clean and baby looks more or less healthy, right? It doesn't look like a baby with any serious conditions. Now, okay, so what does this image this composition tell us? A happy mother, content mother, with a calm, uh, clean, healthy child, right? So if you pay attention, this is what we call, I will show you consumer-oriented advertising. So it tells you nothing about the product. Do we see how much it weighs, or what is the material that it's made of, or how many times you should change it? We see, and if you pay attention, most of advertising today is like this. It is directing your emotions, not your rational decision, but your emotions. So what do we see here? A happy mother with a clean uh, child, a calm child, right? So if you have a look at this, there is no man in the world who would not like to see his wife and child like this. A man who has wife and child, if somebody doesn't want to get married, it's fine. But a man who has a wife and child, it is impossible that there is any man in the world who would not want to see this at home. Wife, calm and happy, and child, calm and clean and healthy. And there is no woman in the world who has a baby that would not wish to look like this, happy with her calm, clean, and healthy child, right? So this advertising actually plays on emotions of any person in this world. So it gives all of us, it gives what we want to see while not telling us anything about the product. Again, I'm not criticizing, our job is not demonizing advertisement, and we should be very careful with children because maybe their parents work in advertising, and we should not say that advertising is evil. Of course, it's not. It's a very respectful profession, and if they want to grow up and work in advertisement, of course, we should make it very clear that we are not demonizing here. But we are here about analyzing. So it's about critical analysis that it tells you nothing about the product, but it targets your feelings and emotions. And in the class, what we do after this, I ask them to remember some advertisements which they saw recently, and then to discuss. And almost always it is the same case that advertising does not tell you much about the product, but it targets your feelings and emotions. What Edward Bernays started 100 years ago, integrating Freud's ideas of our subconscious desires into marketing. Because before Bernays, they would tell us, oh, these diapers are so good, they are made with this material and so on, please buy it. But then Bernays changed it and it plays on your emotions. You want to be like this, you want to be this calm. So it's not about diapers anymore, it's about what you want, right? So when before it, yes, there was product-oriented advertising, which would be oriented on product. And what I try to also explain to my students that advertising went through many stages of changes, and we cannot discuss all of them. But one change we should discuss, moving from product-oriented advertising to consumer-oriented advertising. So product-oriented would tell you about the product, characteristics of the product, and consumer-oriented is playing on your emotions. And one useful game, if you would like it, I sometimes play it with school students. What I ask them is to tell us advertising that they saw recently, and then I ask them to change the product in that advertising. And what changes? And quite often nothing changes, right? So there was a commercial of a juice. And now I tell them, replace it with a juice of another brand. Does anything change? No, right? Because modern commercials, they don't tell you much about the product. Sometimes they do. I don't want to generalize, but in most cases, for example, Cristiano Ronaldo opening a fridge in a commercial. How much does it tell you about the fridge? And then I ask students, now, if this fridge was from this brand, now replace it with any other brand, with any other fridge. What changes? And nothing. Nothing changes, right? Because now it's all about emotions.
Mm.
And as I'm going to finish, let me introduce you very quickly. I will go through this list. It's suggested by Center for Media Literacy Education of United States, 10 techniques of persuasion which advertisers use to promote products. And let me go through this list very quickly, and then you can ask questions if you have some. And these 10 techniques is very good also to work in the classroom, because there can be so many activities designed around this. So first, humor. Advertisers often use humor. And what does humor have to do with potato chips? For example, there is a commercial of potato chips. What does laughter have to do with potato chips? Absolutely nothing, right? So pay attention. There is no direct link between the product and the technique which is used in a commercial, right? But we know why they use humor, of course, because it provokes positive emotions in us, right? There might be many more reasons, but I want to be brief now.
Maybe it suggests that if you buy this product, you become happier.
Of course, that's always the idea. That's always very good. That's always the idea that you will feel better if you buy this product. And it's not only with humor, it's with all other things from this list, like topic of friends in commercials. Why? Because it is a universal emotion, right? Everyone wants to have friends, right? Everyone wants to have good time with their friends. Family in commercials. I ask my students, have you ever seen a sad family in a commercial? And they say no. We always see like a little bit too happy families in commercials, if you ask me.
I do.
And
Yeah.
yes, yes, and that's not how we look. I mean, in my family, this is not how we look all the time. I mean, sometimes we look like this, sometimes we are tired, sometimes we argue, and so on, right? But commercial always shows you a happy family. Why? Again, because it's our desires, it's our emotions and feelings. All of us want to have a happy family. I would not imagine a healthy person who would not want a happy family, right? Fun, of course, in many commercials. Why? Again, this is universal. We all want to have fun. This is a human nature that we need to have fun. Nature in commercials. Well, sometimes it's used to show you that the product is very like fresh and natural and so on, but also because nature is associated with relaxation, vacation, travel, and so on. And so it's associated with positive feelings, right? Always. Oh, again, this is linked to our subconscious because humans lived in nature for hundreds of thousands of years. And as they say, 200,000 years, I think human developed. We lived in nature and we started living in these concrete jungles in like maybe in last 50 years, maximum 100 years, right? So it is in our subconscious that we want nature, we want to see nature. And that's when advertiser shows you nature. Female sexiness, sexuality in advertising. Why? Because it attracts attention very, very effectively, and we all know that. Well, macho sort of strong, of course, in quotes, strong man, which is focused on his like muscles and running in forest and so on and so on, is often used in advertising because some men thinks that if they buy this product, they will also be a, be a more of a man. But that's no, we shouldn't patronize. I mean, that's how our subconscious mind works, as Freud told Edward Bernays. Cartoon, character of cartoon in commercials. On one hand, it's different and easy to remember. On the other hand, we were all kids someday, right? At some point we were children and we used to like cartoons, and it's still here. It's not going anywhere. So we might get some positive attitudes about it. Celebrity, of course, we don't even have to mention. As I told you, Bernays did it 100 years ago, linking positive symbol to the product. So we all like Brad Pitt. We don't care about this watch, but when we see them together, then we pay attention to the watch. It doesn't mean that I will go and buy it right now, but it makes me pay attention to this, right? And last, the topic of wealth in commercials like luxury and so on, showing you that rich people buy this product because we want to be rich. Let's admit, most of people would not mind to be rich. So it also gives you association of that if you have this product, you will look more rich and maybe feel more rich, right? So these are 10 techniques of persuasion by Center for Media Literacy in the United States. Which give a lot of opportunities in the classroom because you could come up with so many game designs and so many activities with this. Okay, I think I went a bit longer than I was supposed to, but yes, now I would love to.
Enjoyed, and I would like to thank you for such an insightful and informative and important presentation. And Gabby, could you please help me with some questions in the chat because I'm going to share the link for the quiz, and I ask the participants to go through this link and do the quiz, complete the quiz, please. You are muted, Gabby.
Excuse me. So I found two questions scrolling up here, and let's take this one. Just a sec. It's difficult to scroll a bit. No, I can't see it. Just a sec. I'm sorry.
We have some questions. Dan asked some questions.
I found Dan's questions. Number 2 says, what does the ethical difference between PR and manipulation look like? Is there any gap between the two practices, that of PR and manipulation?
That is a difficult question because, first of all, I'm not an expert in PR, and I think we should ask PR experts about the ethics of PR. And on the other hand, I'm always trying to be careful in a media literacy class when we speak about any other topic rather than the media to be very careful in order not to demonize this field because it is so media literacy, media education, and speaking about media has this temptation to laugh about things, to criticize things because it is so easy. But as educators, we should remember the responsibility because if you responsibility towards our students because especially at a young age, if they like me as a teacher and I tell them that PR is such a terrible field, that's what they will believe. So I personally, I don't know. The honest question, response to your question is that I don't know. I think we should ask specialists of PR about what are the ethics of PR. But as a media literacy educator, I would always be very careful not to demonize any field. Advertising, PR, these are respectful professions. These are respectful professions. A parent of your student might be working in advertising or PR, and you should not make them feel that your parent. I do the same with social media because it's so easy to go and criticize, but that is my approach that we should be. I personally always try to be very careful about any topic which is not directly related to media and to the particular media message which we are discussing in the classroom. So I think it's an issue of PR specialists more than media literacy specialists, the ethics of PR.
I have a
Absolutely.
question. Are there
Yes.
any ways of avoiding being manipulated by all those, things, commercials, advertising?
Uh,
And how can we teach
completely.
kids or students to pay close attention?
Uh, uh, when it comes to advertising, I have a positive news that years ago I conducted a research. I went to a school. I was a PhD student, by the way, and I was just beginning to learn about all of it. And I conducted a research in a school. During 2 weeks, I went there every day and spoke about different types of media, different types of issues like social networks, advertising, political issues, and so on. And after 1 year, I came back to the school and interviewed my former students to see what they remember and what they have used and applied in their real lives. And one thing that all of them mentioned was advertising. So after 1 year, some students remembered some things which we discussed, some students remembered others, like some remembered stereotypes, some did not remember stereotypes, some remembered political campaigns, some didn't, but most students remembered about advertising. And they said that they had applied, they said that they had developed a critical approach towards advertising. So my own, of course, very small scale research, maybe only a case study, actually showed that yes, I mean, completely we will never measure it, whether it's completely or not completely, but media literacy can for sure this approach can develop critical analysis skills towards advertising among students. So maybe not completely, we will never be able to measure it, but at some extent, of course, they can be less manipulated by all of this. But they need to know about it. They need to know about what we just spoke.
Okay, thank you. And Dan, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you very much for the presentation. It was absolutely interesting, to say the least. And Mr. Jologua did a great job of presenting us, let's say, the basics of what we call the propaganda model, Edward Bernays model. I have a question to ask him. One of my friends, who's also an academic, she works at a university in Romania, teaches courses in communication and public relations and everything related to this topic. And she told me about an academic, a writer, Christian Fox, that's his name, who is specialized in the field of communication. And he wrote a book, which is, I think, it's kind of a seminal work nowadays. I guess so. Which is called Communication and Capitalism: A Critical Theory. And Christian Fuchs has an analysis of the role of communication in contemporary capitalism, and he comes up to with the idea that there has to be some debate about the forms of domination and the potentials for liberation if we take control of the way PR and propaganda, commercial propaganda is done nowadays. The main idea of Christian Fuchs is the following. We use PR and the science of communication because we want to sell the products or services really fast so that the production of services and consumer goods could begin again. So the faster you produce, the better it is for the world of commerce. And in between the production and the valorization of the services and product, you have PR. Do you agree with this point of view or not?
Uh, Probably yes. It's very difficult to agree or disagree with just one hearing about a book, but probably it makes sense. Let's have a look at when did advertising become mass media? During the industrialization, right? Because before there was an advertisement, maybe a shoemaker would put a small note that he has new shoes or new leather in a local shop or somewhere in his city or town, but he didn't need like mass advertising, because if even if he received 1,000 orders, he would not be able to deliver it. So advertising became mass media, mass advertising, after these factories started mass production, right? Because with mass production, you need mass sales. Otherwise, mass production will not work. So that's when advertising became mass media, right? A mass way of communication. So I think what you described in these terms sounds fair. Yes, but I would love to see more about it and read more about it, maybe. But on the other hand, I think that media literacy is in the given situation, call it capitalism or mass production or whatever it is, in the given situation, media literacy is one of the key most important areas that we should strengthen and develop as a response to the current situation, like local or global. My short answer to any question is media literacy. So whenever they ask me any question, my answer is always media literacy, because especially when it comes to marketing and mass production and consumption culture and so on.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you so much, Professor Jologua, for sharing your valuable insights today. And thank you to everyone in the audience for being with us. Don't forget to take the quiz. It's already in the chat. Some questions may require logic, but we are sure you can do it.
Yes, and I would also like to thank you, dear Professor Jologua, for taking the time, joining and enlightening us on such an important topic. And also, I'm grateful to Gabi for being such a wonderful co-host, and to our viewers for being active, for asking questions. So please join us next time. We have more exciting topics and guests ahead. And until next time, please stay informed, stay curious, and of course, stay media literate. So, goodbye and see you
Thank
next.
you. I would also like to thank you for this opportunity to especially to Shalala and Gabi. Thank you for inviting me to your project, and I wish best of luck to your team and to your work of spreading media literacy in our region. We are neighbors, so I think our work in this field is something to appreciate and something to wish best luck to. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye and
Bye
see you.
bye.